I've evolved from this stance of like, oh, it's hard to meet friends in your 30s. I used to say that all the time. It's well documented on this show. Put yourself out there. Persistence.
Andrew, you're such a motivational speaker.
I know, right? Who am I anymore?
I should not have tried to put on dark lipstick this close to recording because you make one wrong move and it basically necessitates redoing the makeup or like around your mouth and your chin. So I was like, God damn.
See, this is why I don't wear lipstick. Then I don't have to worry about it.
Thank you.
Looks good.
It does look good. It's a hot color.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that one of the Fenty ones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Laura and I, God. We went shopping.
We did.
Yeah. Like separately, but together. Because Ulta was having a sale on Fenty lipsticks.
They were
I was like,
off.
I gotta get Laura in on this deal because it's so good.
Why don't we just pretend that's the start of the show? Because it's a great way to promote the YouTube channel. If you want to look at Laura's lipstick, check out the YouTube
And you
channel.
Definitely do.
You definitely do.
Go for it.
Yeah. We already have a few hundred viewers on our first YouTube video. I was just looking before.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I guess people are eager to see what we actually look like. If you haven't been a patron. I'm so sorry. Yeah, the video has nothing but dislikes. They went onto the video and they're like, ew, dislike.
Pretty much. You know what? We're podcasters first.
Right. We got faces for radio.
I was just going to say, you three do have faces for podcast. Well, anyway, welcome to Millennial, the home of pretend adulting and nothing but love for Taylor Swift, Haitians, and geese. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
We're actually recording on National Voter Registration Day, so a friendly reminder to listeners, make sure you are registered to vote.
And just a reminder that voter registration deadlines, I think, vary state by state slightly, but for the most part, I think you're looking at the first week in October. So if you check your registration status and discover that for some reason you're not registered, you still have time, but you want to submit that registration post haste.
Post haste. Just like Thomas Jefferson said.
Right. Register post haste.
Donald Trump also pointed out on Sunday that he hates Taylor Swift, and I can't help but feel like that is not going to be helping his case this November. Also on that same day, there was that second assassination attempt, and it already feels like it happened an eternity ago. The circumstances around this one were very different. So there's that compared to the first assassination attempt. I like that Biden came out and said we need to add more people to the Secret Service. Congress needs to throw more money their way.
I hate to say this, but I was just, and I think that maybe Laura will agree with me here. I'm just so relieved that it was a normal looking white dude, like it normally is. And I hate that that's my first instinct to think that way, but that's a testament to all the toxic vitriol Trump throws out there with regards to immigrants and people that are maybe not here legally for whatever reason. And also, there's that whole, I know Andrew was joking about Haitians and geese, but there's already so much racist vitriol that his campaign is throwing out there. It just would have been awful to have seen, looked into that assassination attempt, had seen that it was anyone other than a white person, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think too, I know there was some of this for the first one. I know there's definitely been some of it for the second one of people positing the idea that it wasn't real. And I don't feel like that's a responsible thing to say because we just none of us were there. But I think what is disturbing to me is that it happened again so close to the last time it happened, where an investigation had to be done into the work that was even done to secure that whole area. It seems like the Secret Service would be on high alert for that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, Is this straight up a funding issue? Is this idiot like slipping his Secret Service detail? What were the circumstances here? And obviously I know the shooter got onto the golf course, but
sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like on the edge of the golf course. I've been reading a little bit about this, and the Secret Service has never liked Trump golfing. So you said, did Trump slip Secret Service? No, but he also hasn't really been listening to their suggestions. And I saw today that they're telling him he cannot golf for who knows how long until they lock things down further, which I'm sure is going to make him go nuts.
And that's fair. That, it is like, it's a two-way street, right? They need to set ground rules. And he also, as somebody who should be responsible for himself in some way, needs to listen when they say, hey, like, you need to cut back on XYZ for a bit.
Right. Yeah.
That's part of the safety protocol, I mean, like, he can sit there and cry about Secret Service, like, not doing their jobs all they want. But if he's not listening, then he's not letting them do their job.
Yeah. Just think about how wide open and large golf courses are.
Yeah. Just also the fact that it has to be like his own golf course too, that he goes to. It's not that other presidents haven't golfed before, but I'm sure that there are some golfing areas that are more secure than others, just by nature of the fact that, people like to golf. Like I said, other presidents have golfed before him. But he's really, I mean, that was a big issue too with the fact that he always wanted to fly over to Mar-a-Lago on the weekends when he was in office. It puts everybody in an uncomfortable position because they don't have the staffing to make sure that he's safe over there. They have to put in a whole new protocol. It costs more money. There's a lot of moving parts that come into play with this. So
it's just frustrating because this election season is already so fucked up. We don't need anything else added to the equation here. Secret Service just needs to get it together. If it's a funding issue, handle it, hire more people. If it's an issue
which comes down to Congress.
Yeah. Like if it's an issue of like the president needs to accept that he can't just go wherever he wants, the former president, can't just go wherever he wants, then that's it. Like, it's so irritating.
All right. Well, moving on to a lighter subject, I saw this column in the New York Times I wanted to talk about concerning how to maintain friendships. This piece looks at the benefits of setting up a recurring friend date that you can use to foster deeper friendships. And in the article, the writer talks about a weekly breakfast at a specific diner that he's been hosting for 40 weeks and counting. And he wanted to do this because he had lacked deeper connections after a lot of moving around from place to place. And I want to quote part of the column now. I'd gotten so good at setting up a social life from scratch in each new city, but I had forgotten how to nourish it. Now I was older, more settled. In New York, I longed for depth. The precursor to that, I knew, was consistency. When in Berlin, I learned about the German tradition of Stammtisch, which translates to regulars table, where bars reserve a table for everyday goers to sit together and socialize. In a way, this idea of community reminded me of the one I enjoyed when going to church every week as a kid. So during my first months in New York, I tried my version of a Stammtisch. Standing appointments, I decided, could provide the structure of my new life. The diner in my neighborhood seemed like a natural place to start. With its booths, booths, high-top stools, and thick-rimmed mugs, maybe some boobs too. Not to mention its big, cheap portions and an aesthetic reminiscent of something you'd find in a small town, it seemed ideal for a regular weekend rendezvous. And the writer's friend group confirms their availability the night before every week, which I find a little much. My feeling on this, and I can get into this a little more in a few minutes, but just say, here's the time, here's the place, show up, don't show up, I don't care. Maybe I'll see you, maybe I won't. You don't need to go around confirming whether or not you'll be there.
I guess that's more for reservation's sake, so he knows like how many people are going to join him when he gets to the restaurant.
Okay. I guess that makes sense.
It's like, oh, table for 10, but then like all 10 people don't show up, that kind of sucks.
Yeah. Maybe find a restaurant that isn't frequented by a lot of people. So there's always a big or small table.
Or like, a park too, if you want to like host like a monthly picnic or something in the spring or summer.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. That is cute.
Everybody bring a dish.
We've talked a lot about finding and maintaining friendships on the show, particularly in After Dark. We've been doing like this friendship series, and we've been talking about the challenges that come with friendships. This idea in this column seems like an easy hack to me to keep up appearances without the burden of having to always make new plans, which does get stressful. One weekend goes by, and if you're trying to keep up appearances with people on a weekly or maybe bi-weekly basis, it gets exhausting to have to come up with new ideas time and time again. So I wanted to talk about this as a way to build long-lasting and deeper friendships. And what I also love about this particular idea with the regulars table is that there are certain places that we love to visit time and time again. Like I can think of specific bars or restaurants or parks that I love to visit. This is an easy way to have an excuse to return to these places. And it gives you something to look forward to week or every other week, whatever cadence you want to do it at. So for you two, do you have standing friend dates in your own lives? Have you considered this idea before?
Yeah, this show. This show is my standing friend date.
That's sweet, but I don't know if I'm going to count this.
Andrew's like, that's sweet, but I don't think of you that way.
We're not friends, Laura.
Well, way to drop it on me in front of 20 people. I don't know.
No, I see your point, though, because like being long distance friends, this is a way for us to connect on a weekly basis, and we do have fun.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say kind of, but not really. It's nothing that's set in stone, but I do have one friend that lives fairly close to me, and about once a month or so, I would say we kind of meet at a coffee shop that's located in between where we both live, and we just do a co-work together because she also works from home. So I'll bring my computer and so will she, and we'll just work, or like if we need to bounce ideas off of somebody or say, hey, can you like read this over and see if it sounds good? There's somebody there, which is great. And then we usually break for lunch and have a little catch up. And so that's like the nice little reward for getting some good solid work hours in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, that is really sweet. And Camille, who's listening live on our Patreon right now, said, I do two things similar to this. One is Monday mornings at a coffee shop, and whatever friends want to show up do. Yesterday, there were 4 of us. Second is weekly trivia. Some friends can't make it each week, but there's a core group, and then other people do.
I would love to do a weekly trivia. That sounds like so much fun.
That really does sound fun.
Yeah.
But also like kind of a commitment.
Yeah. But I think that people are more likely sometimes to do like a weekly trivia situation, because everybody needs to like unwind at least once a week, and you can go and treat yourself. And
I don't do weeknight social hangs a lot, in part because some of the stuff that we do runs a little late. But I do feel very much the idea of going out on a Tuesday or Wednesday night just to grab dinner with friends to kind of like help break up the monotony of the week.
That's my issue too, because a lot of my friends live so far away. Like we're scattered now. It's not like back in college when we all lived like fairly close together. I really don't live close to a lot of my good friends. So it is kind of a situation where if we want to see each other, we have to plan something out. And so sometimes that does mean that, say like if it's like a Thursday, for example, I'm rushing out the door right after we're done with our planning meeting. But then there's like some days, you're right, like the shows take up a lot of time. So it's because of the distance, like I wouldn't be able to do something on a Tuesday night, for example, because that would, require us to like start hanging around 8, and that might be too late for them, might be too late for me. So it's tough.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I think is a good point as well, Pam. I feel like it's a lot easier to do this with regularity when you live in a walkable community. Like, I think about when I was in college or even when I was living in New York.
Same.
There were certain rituals that kind of naturally came about as a result of living in a walkable community, because it wasn't a huge commitment to say, oh, let's meet for breakfast every other Sunday or something like that, because it was just like a 10-minute walk. It wasn't anything that like required you to carve out a huge chunk of your day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or like even with coworkers too, like if you work near bars, it's like, oh, let's go grab a drink and some apps and we'll both beat the traffic. You know, it's a lot easier to do that.
To the point about some of our stuff that we do running later, I've tried to figure out how to deal with this because I want a weeknight hangout from time to time. I've thought about, we do the Slug Club and Bay hangouts on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm in Pacific time. I've been thinking of doing one of those calls from the car outside the bar or restaurant that I'm planning to meet somebody at. That way, right at 6, I'm ready to go.
You're going to pull,
Yeah, I was about to say you can do that, but
you
those
can't
in
ever
glass
say
houses.
anything. Yeah.
What's different? I planned to appear in the car at 5 p.m.
Well, so do they.
Because otherwise, I'm showing up then at 6:30, and some of my friends get off kind of early here, like 3 or 4 o'clock. They're done working for the day. That's
divine.
Yeah. Color me jelly. I know. So I'm trying to meet them in the middle or do as good as I can. So if I can cut a half hour.
Do you have a strict bedtime? Because I'll forego sleep. If because sometimes the hangout is like going really well, and it's like you don't need to stay out that late. Like I'm just thinking of this is like a bad example because it's not somebody that I see all the time, but like there have been a few times where like Pat has been in town, for example, and I'm thinking I'll be back home by 9, and then Andrew's calling Pat at 11. It's like, oh, you're still out.
Okay, that happened once where I was wondering why he was out so late, and now I have his location constantly, so I can check on him if I'm getting worried.
Oh God! So you have just another spy cam.
Basically,
on top of the drone.
It's my drone when I cannot reach by drone.
I'll do the same with like other friends too, because like, sometimes you think you're going to cut it at a certain time, but you're having a good conversation. So
yeah, I don't have a bedtime limit, but I do also know a lot of people that I do know here go wake up pretty early too. So I don't want to push them too late into the night.
That's fair. Yeah, you have to be conscious of people's time too.
Yeah, so I think most people that I know are content with like a 2-hour weeknight hangout. Like, considering we typically see each other on the weekends too, there's no reason why we need to spend 4 hours together on a weeknight. Now, if somebody's visiting from out of town, that would be different. But I think 90 minutes to 2 hours is a pretty sufficient weeknight hangout, all things considered.
Yeah, it's like a good happy hour.
Yeah. In terms of what I've done for like a standing hang, a friend and I here do try to hike 8 to 9 months out of the year on a almost weekly basis. We enjoy each other's company. We like the one-on-one time. We have very similar interests. He's even started calling it Sunday church because he appreciates it so much, which I think is super sweet. Yeah.
That's really cute.
Really nice.
Yeah. In my past life with my ex, him and I were doing what I would call stacked Fridays. And there was a restaurant called Stacked, and we would always go there on Fridays. We were also pretty far away from friends when we were living in Thousand Oaks. Pam, you remember my life there?
I do. That was very far.
Yeah, very far from LA. Nobody wanted to visit us, and we didn't want to go to LA on a Friday night. So we would often do stacked Fridays, and it was just something to look forward to every Friday night. We loved that restaurant, loved the food, loved the vibes, loved all of it. Britney Spears frequented that same mall, so there was also that chance you would see Britney, which was an additional thrill on Friday nights. We never saw her.
Oh, damn.
But she was there. TMZ showed me she was there in many a paparazzi photo. So I really like recurring hangouts. And I wanted to share with listeners some other ideas. We've been circling around some of them. We mentioned trivia nights or maybe just going out for a drink or dinner. How about a book club? And I want to also plug meetup.com. I've mentioned it before, but when I saw my brother and his girlfriend a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned to them meetup.com because I was telling them about the book club that I'm in, and they'd never heard of it before, which shocked me. I feel like meetup.com is pretty well known in this day and age. So nobody sleep on meetup.com. You can find book clubs, you can find sport leagues, you can find trivia nights, dinner club nights. There's one in Vegas. I have a link to it here. 20s and 30s Las Vegas dinner club. And every couple weeks, this group gets together at a different restaurant around town. And I think that's just like such a great way to meet new people and explore the city. I've also seen like video game nights at a bar, video game tournaments at like arcades. I've seen weekly or monthly board or card game events at local cafes. There's a couple gaming cafes here, like board game cafes here. There's so many different opportunities where there are weekly events happening around town. You just have to spend a little time seeking them out. Why I also like these, the book club, for example, is a very low stakes social commitment in my mind because you appear once a month and there's no further expectations than that. So it's not like you're burdening yourself with a lot of extra social activity month to month. It's just the 90-minute to 2-hour book club per month. Now, of course, you also have to spend time reading the book, but at least in my book club, and I assume most book clubs, you don't have to finish the book. You don't even have to read the book. You can just show up and listen in on the conversation. And the guy who hosts the book club lets people know that because I think he and others recognize it can be hard to keep up with the book every month.
That actually makes me feel better. As long as you don't care about spoilers, then that sounds perfect because I feel like the books that I'm reading are in constant competition with each other.
Yeah.
So like it can be tough to finish one in like a single go anyhow. So that makes it less stressful. I might look into joining one.
All of these activities we've been talking about, they're harmless ideas where people are just looking for friends. It's not about becoming the not so tight end at these events. It's all platonic, baby. It's all no romance. No romance. Sorry, I got football on the mind, so thinking about tight ends and not so tight ends.
You're only thinking about football.
I liked this other idea that you had down here under book club, which is to join a sport. If you have enough friends, you can make your own team. Like, I know people that have signed up for like adult softball and adult volleyball, and they've just made teams based on the people that they know, friends that they know. And then if they don't have enough people asking friends, if they have other friends that might want to join. And sometimes that's even better than joining a pre-existing team because a lot of pre-existing teams are super competitive. But if you're joining with just like people you know, and the idea is that everybody understands it's just for fun, like nobody's like playing necessarily to win, but winning is a bonus. It takes the pressure off, especially for people that might be like anxious to try sports as adults because maybe like they haven't done sports since they were in high school, or maybe they weren't even good at sports when they were in high school or felt they weren't good at sports. But if you frame it in a fun way, it could be a nice way to get out of your comfort zone and try something new too.
That's a good point.
I like that.
And I think you can also keep an eye out on meetup.com for events that specifically say all skill levels welcome, low stakes, don't worry about feeling like you have a lot of experience. I think I do see that type of thing from time to time because to your point, it can be intimidating to join one of these because you're like, well, am I even good enough to play with these other people? Am I going to feel like shit?
And just as like a personal example, I remember a couple times when I was in high school, like my dad and stepmom used to be big into joining these like adult like softball leagues, for example. And a couple of times when I was in high school, like they didn't have enough players to play, so they'd have me like go out there and play with them. And I never really wanted to because I was never like the best. And there's so much pressure for you to like do well. And it's like, then it's not fun, you know, like if you're trying to have fun, you're not trying to be like it shouldn't be something that causes you anxiety because you're worried about like people hating on you if you drop a ball or something like that.
Right.
So,
you mentioned volleyball and softball. I've seen lots of kickball leagues.
That's a big one.
Billiards leagues, which are great if you don't want to be outside. Also, if you don't want to be outside, bowling leagues. Mm-hmm. I saw a couple months ago a bag toss league at a gay bar here. Like, that's the easiest one of all.
Sounds great. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, if you're really intimidated by the idea of like physical sports or running or having to deal with a heavy bowling ball, bag toss seems for you. I think that bar has a pool too. And I think the deal was, you join the bag toss league and you also get to swim in the pool for free after. It seemed like a pretty good deal. So yeah, there are so many opportunities. You just have to take some time to look around Facebook groups, meetup.com, etc., and put yourself out there. And I think that's the biggest hurdle. Most of the time, it's taking that first step, stepping outside of your comfort zone. And you might have to do it a couple more times, stepping out of that comfort zone. But once you build that habit of stepping out and you see the benefits of stepping out of your comfort zone, you're going to be on top of the world. And if you're not going to try to put yourself out there, then don't ask yourself why you aren't having a better social life. It is possible. I've evolved from this stance of like, oh, it's hard to meet friends in your 30s. I used to say that all the time. It's well documented on this show. Put yourself out there. Persistence.
Andrew, you're such a motivational speaker.
I know, right? Who am I anymore? the new me. Andrew's out of his shell, touching grass, eating ass, and printing t-shirts. One other thing we wanted to touch on, Pam, when we were planning this discussion, you noted that some people are hesitant to commit to a recurring friend event. You've had experience with this, right?
Yeah, not personally, but I do have a friend of mine who it's so funny because as soon as you brought this topic up, I immediately thought of her because we had been out for just like a Sunday hike. And she was telling me that she was wanting to make more of an effort to connect with, I think it was her college friends or maybe her master's degree friends. And she thought, well, maybe like we can set up a monthly catch up call. And what she found was whenever she like posed this idea, no matter if she assured them that it didn't like necessarily like always have to take place. Like if something comes up, of course we can cancel and just try again for next month. That a lot of the people that she was asking about, like committing to this had a hard time committing. And she was asking me why I thought that was. And I didn't really have an answer for her at the time. And so I thought, well, this is like the perfect, place to ask you all like why you think people are hesitant to commit, even if, it is framed as like a low stakes commitment.
Yeah. I think it's still about stepping out of that comfort zone and maybe feeling like they are already too busy to commit to something else.
Yeah.
Maybe they're afraid of starting and then letting down the rest of their friends. My feeling is, and we read this message from Camille too, where it's like anybody can show up to my group if they want. I think that's the best approach for that type of thing. Like this example that you were raising, Pam, just say, show up if you want. If you can't, it's no big deal. Nobody's going to care. We'll catch you next month. I don't know. Maybe it takes a little encouraging of these people to get them to show up too. Be like, hey, we'd really like to see you.
Yeah, that's
Stop
a good
by
point.
once.
It's a weird combination of like feeling too busy, but also having FOMO at the same time, because I think I think we've all experienced this. If you get invited to do something and you don't go enough times, people stop inviting you. And that feels shitty, right? Yeah. So I think there is like that unease around feeling like I don't have time for this, but I also like I still want to be loved.
Right.
I still want people to want to talk to me.
Oh.
Well, I think one thing you can do there is just let these people know, hey, I really appreciate that you're offering this recurring hangout. Like I turned a friend down when they invited us on a vacation. I was like, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you're inviting us. It means a lot that you are inviting us. It speaks to how you feel about us, but we just can't make it work this time. So I'd say just express your appreciation, and that'll keep the hangout invites coming. But then you also have to show up from time to time.
Yeah.
If you're one of these people that doesn't ever show up or doesn't try to initiate.
Yeah.
You're
can't
going to get ignored.
No all the time to the small stuff and then expect to get invited forever to, like, especially to the big stuff. You know?
100%.
We've had some good comments in the Discord. Hannah said, I think a lot of the time the group chat just needs someone to make a plan and then people will come or not. But the wishy-washy, maybe we should plan something, never goes anywhere. Yeah. A lot of people say that. Oh, let's hang out sometime. I hate that. Freaking follow through.
Yeah. And you can tell right away if somebody is just saying that. Like, if, you know, once you take it to like, okay, what days are you free? If they don't answer, you're like, okay, that's fine. Ball's in their court. They can try next time.
Yeah.
Roshni said that this issue can kind of come up with moms groups. So she's in a couple, and one is more come if you can, and the other is like, if you say you're coming, you should come, which I feel like the latter approach is a lot of pressure.
For a mom.
Especially for a mom's group. Like, are you serious?
That sounds like a Karen organizing that mom group.
Yeah.
Show up or you're blacklisted.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're getting booted from the group chat. No, thank you.
Ooh, that would hurt.
You don't want to be friends with people like that anyway, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An approach we've been trying to take recently with our friend group is that it's very difficult to plan for everyone. So assemble a small group for an event. We're going to go pumpkin picking October 1st, the four of us. We're all set. We're locked in. Then send that out to everybody else. Hey, us four are going pumpkin picking October 1st. If you can make it, great. If not, we'll catch you next year. Otherwise, if you're trying to get a single date for, let's say, 10 people, it's going to be tons of back and forth. Everybody's got different shit going on every weekend.
Yeah.
And it just gets so frustrating to plan that way. So set a small group, lock down a small group, and then try to get other people coming in.
I really like that strategy. That is a good strategy.
Yeah.
Because it also because then if somebody says, well, you guys never do anything when I can do stuff, then you just say, well, why don't you plan out an event and let us know when is good for that. So the ball's back in their court, and then they should just try a little harder to plan stuff out. Because I think a lot of people too in friendships, they coast and then they get offended when stuff doesn't work around their schedule. But again, like if you're not making an effort to try and plan things, then, you can't really complain too much.
And maybe you need to be less busy if you can't attend as many events. Like we're planning stuff on the weekends. We're not exactly making a tough schedule to work with here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the way the group chat was blowing up over the weekend over a haunted walkthrough thing, trying to coordinate that. Me and a couple others were like, this has got to stop. There's got to be a better solution. So that's where this idea came from. And it works so much better, even if some people are going to be left out. But that's
something that we did, and for a really big group, I would not recommend it. But what we did when, so last year I got my whole family an escape room experience that we could do together. And because it was 6 of us going, we had to coordinate all our schedules. So I used this service. I'm not remembering the name of it, but it basically allowed people to, on a calendar, list all their availabilities. And then when everybody submitted, the calendar would send me all of the overlapping availabilities that worked for everybody. And then I just got to pick whatever it was because I knew it worked for everyone, and it made it so much easier.
That's cool. I'll give you another idea similar to that. In Instagram group chats, you can create a poll. So we've done, hey, of these options, which date is best for everybody to do, let's say, a housewarming party? Then everybody votes, and the most voted on date wins. And that's it. You can't complain. You can't feel left out. I mean, you could feel left out, but you can't complain that they're picking that date when that is the date that received the most votes. So we've done that a couple times.
Specifically.
Right.
Yes. And I get it. Listen, we all suffer with anxiety. I know I definitely sometimes get too much in my head about that, but you're right. When it's that transparent, you then can't have anybody that says, well, they're excluding me specifically, because there's poll results right there. Nobody's like, plotting against you to try and make sure you can't make the hang. It's fine.
Exactly. So I encourage our listeners to seek out some recurring social activities, because there have been numerous studies showing that millennials and Gen Z report feeling lonely. And that's thanks in part to our social media addictions and just being isolated from one another. And we lack genuine connection. So that's why it's good to try and attend these social events that are being organized around your town. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Laura has a Bumble BFF update for us, speaking of being busy. So we'll be right back. So Laura, I tried to get you on Bumble BFF a couple weeks ago, and do you have a little update you'd like to share with everybody?
I think I'm just going to have to delete my account because I don't have time for this. It makes me feel really bad. But the reason that I had this realization is Andrew did a lovely job setting my profile up for me, because I wasn't going to do it. Well, I didn't do it. I downloaded the app and sat on it for a month without doing anything. And I got a couple of messages from girls who seemed really, really nice. Aww. And I felt bad because I just haven't had a chance to really follow up on anything. And it just feels bad. It feels icky. When you're on a dating app and someone messages you and you don't respond to them, I don't feel like that's as big of a deal. But on an app where people are looking for friends, I don't want to waste anyone's time. And I don't think that I should be trying to do that if I can't prioritize it,
I think you're making the right choice there.
Yeah.
Don't lead people on.
I don't want to, no.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of good friends, and I'm really happy with my friend group. And the number of friends that I have. And I definitely want more friends, but everything is so crazy right now with all the podcasts and work and life and everything that I'm just I don't think I could be a good friend to someone new who was trying to get to know me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's where I'm at now. I feel like I don't want to try and use Bumble anymore because I don't want existing friendships to fall by the wayside, nor do I want potential new matches to be misled. Because maintaining friendships, as we've been talking about, is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. You got to be very mindful. And that's not a demure joke. You got to be very mindful. You got to be on top of it.
It's also tough oftentimes to blend friend groups too. You could have different groups of friends for different things. And it sounds to me with your situation, Andrew, that you've created a group of people that like to hang out together. And so I would also understand being apprehensive about trying to introduce somebody new into the mix if it's already working well,
Right. And I worked hard to form this group. Nobody's getting a free ride into this group at this point. You know what I mean?
But anyway, we wanted to have a discussion about this article that Rolling Stone put out called How 9/11 Became One of the Internet's Most Popular Memes. And the whole take of this article is that Gen Z as a generation has initiated the trend of processing this traumatic event with dark humor. And we're going to talk about whether or not that's true amongst a couple of other things, like where is the line with processing traumatic events with dark humor. But just to give you a taste of this article's stance. Olivia, a 21-year-old college student, was sitting in an English class at her Minnesota school last week when her professor began talking about the challenges in writing about traumatic events. But when he used 9/11 as an example and described to the class how hectic things seemed that day, she realized just how she felt, or rather, didn't feel about the attacks. Being terminally online is wild because someone mentioned 9/11 in my class today, and I genuinely forgot that not everyone thinks it's funny now. She subsequently wrote in a post on X, formerly Twitter, favorited more than 10,000 times. So, first of all, I'll add that towards the end of this article, they pointed out that Olivia took that tweet down because she realized that it was pretty offensive. But I first want to call out that I don't think this assertion is correct. I feel like millennials as a generation were processing 9/11 with dark humor before a lot of Gen Zers were born. And I wanted to see if this resonated with y'all first and foremost. Like, I feel like I started hearing the dark humor about it from my peers, like in the decade after it happened.
I think so too. I can't remember specific examples, but I have noticed an uptick in 9/11 memes over the last year or two. And I feel very confident that I was not seeing that prior to the last couple of years.
I think
Specifically,
that's
the one,
right.
the photo of George W. Bush being informed about the attacks while he was sitting in the classroom. That one I see a lot. And it is funny. Like, Laura, you have an example here.
Yeah. So we can just, I don't mind sharing this one. This is genuinely one that made me laugh out loud when I saw it. When Queen Elizabeth passed, someone on Twitter posted a second plane has hit Her Majesty. And I'm not going to lie, I was like, that was well constructed. But like, I think, and maybe we'll get into this when we talk about like the line of processing with dark humor, but I think at least for that particular example, it's kind of like the more ridiculous the statement, the less offensive it is.
Yeah. And
right?
to that point, the one that I see a lot is like people commenting, this was my 9/11. And it's always something really dumb, pop culture related, like, oh, on this date, 10 years ago, One Direction went on hiatus. And then someone would be like, this was my 9/11. Or like when Zayn left the band, that was my 9/11. And it's like, that sounds so dramatic. But when you think about it in the context of what they're trying to say, it's just like a cataclysmic event that changed you as a person, right? And so when you think about it that way, there's the context clues. I don't think anybody's trying to be offensive. They're just trying to say like, and nobody actually thinks that like, you know, the death of that many people is like going to compare. But what they're trying to say is like, this was a big moment for me personally.
And I also feel like, or at least I feel like, I mean, I've probably used this at some point. I think we all have. But I feel like at least when I've recalled using it or hearing people use it, the implication is like, it's not that serious. Like the fact that I'm even like making this quip and making this comparison shows that like I'm being dramatic, obviously,
well,
you know,
even back to Andrew's example of the, you know, Bush finding out, I think that at this point, it wouldn't be off the mark to suggest that younger Gen Z and, you know, older Gen Alpha maybe don't even realize that like that is footage from that day, you know, because memes and like these like still images, they kind of like yeah, that's an iconic image. But if you don't, like, if you didn't live through that, if you haven't like watched all the tribute footage that happens every year, which why would people that young bother to do that unless it was for a school assignment? Like, it's possible that there's a disconnect and they just see, like, they just know it as a funny image from the internet, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Another meme that's been going around unrelated to 9/11 is a screenshot of the Instagram countdown widget, and it says killing myself, and it's counted down to 0, and it says postponed across it, and people will post this when they have good news. It's so dark, and I really am not a fan of the killing myself. Like, I'm gonna kill myself, or I'm not gonna kill myself now. But this visual was funny with the confetti over the killing myself countdown and then postponed across it. But yeah, people just, I like this point that when it's beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're making a joke, you're being really extreme, that's when it's funny. There are certain lines I draw when it comes to 9/11. Apparently, there have been some memes with the photo of somebody jumping out of one of the towers.
The jumper.
Yeah, that is still so horrific to me.
Yeah, that's
will
fucked.
never be funny. That's also very personal too. Like, you're watching a person die in that photo. Like, there's nothing funny about that.
No. And I think it's also, I think sometimes what people forget is you got to read the fucking room, man. Like, I'm not going to sit here and police what people want to talk about, but I'm just looking in our Discord and like, there's a variety of opinions and feelings here. And I just think it's always important, no matter your age and no matter whether you remember it or not, to consider like who's in the room around you, right? Like,
and this was the thing that affected so many people. Like, I mean, like, it's obviously like if you were if you live on the East Coast, probably in poor taste to make any sort of joke, because chances are you're going to be in a room with somebody that knows somebody personally, or like is like, not very far removed from that situation still. And so it's tough to stomach that. I mean, even like, I would say it might be even risky to make some of those jokes on the West Coast because those planes were coming back to California. You know, like my mom knows people that were on those planes.
Well, even Roshni, who's listening live right now, doesn't find any of the memes appropriate. She says she still finds it all offensive.
Yeah,
I get it.
I am lucky, despite having lived in between where the 3-4 planes hits, that I did not know anybody who was working at the Twin Towers or in DC or anywhere else near where those planes crashed. So the other thing is that I was so young when it happened, as all of us were. And it does feel like another lifetime ago. And for Gen Z, they didn't live through this. Most of them. I mean, this 21-year-old you quoted at the top of this, Laura, she wasn't even alive. It's almost like it didn't happen for her.
It's tough to contextualize. I'm not making excuses for the younger generation, but it is tough to contextualize just how horrible that day was to somebody who didn't live through it. I think about too, like, but this is why we have places like museums that are supposed to help with that. Like, I remember learning about the Holocaust in school, and I remember it being a harrowing experience, nowhere near as close as like, I mean, like the reaction that I had learning about that in school is nowhere near the reaction I had going to the Holocaust Museum in DC, for example.
Right.
Because that brings it to life, especially like the shoes. I remember that having like a profound impact on me, is just seeing the shoes specifically. But you can't expect history to resonate like that with people. And I think that like, that's why it's important that, these tributes run yearly, but sometimes it just takes like a specific thing for it to really resonate with the younger generation. and it sounds weird because it's so recent history for us, but you also have to remember that's like, it was also 23 years ago. There are kids, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, that maybe weren't even alive or were barely alive. So all they're seeing is like the repeat footage. Camille made a really good point in the Discord too. It says the younger generation also seems to have had a lot of exposure to videos of 9/11 every year in school.
Mhm.
So they're desensitized to it, unlike the people who live through it. I feel that way about myself because of like the way that the journalism program was taught at the university I went to. 9/11 was a huge tentpole teaching tool, especially in terms of talking about the ethical responsibility of news one way or the other. And when you're sitting in a classroom and just looking at footage for 3 hours, like it's not going to hit the same in hour 3 as it will in hour 1.
Yeah.
You know, and by the third hour, you're desensitized to it. And I think that that's really kind of the point they're trying to make, is that you need to come, for journalists, you have to compartmentalize what you're seeing, but you still have to have the empathy to help you make the ethical decisions of like what to run. So it's tough.
Yeah.
There's not a lot I haven't seen. And so I can't see, like, I won't, it's very rare that I see footage nowadays that like moves me to tears about that day, but that's like a direct result of being desensitized to it.
Yeah. And seeing the same footage over and over every
again.
year. Because
yes,
at this point, they're basically playing the same footage that resonated the most with people at the time. And it's just being recycled. Obviously, still horrible, but your brain will do that to protect you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if the frequency of the memes online are part of the problem here in terms of how it's become normalized to make jokes that involve 9/11 memes. There's power in numbers there. If it's not just one or two people online making jokes using 9/11 memes, it's happening a lot these days. And I think it's kind of in a fucked up way become socially acceptable to use these memes pretty frequently. Now, like with all trends, eventually this will probably burn out. I mentioned this George Bush meme. I've been seeing it a lot, but like with any meme, it's gonna disappear in time. I think, needless to say, none of us have been using the 9/11 memes and probably won't. I would feel uncomfortable doing that. It's just like, who am I to think I'm so funny I'm going to come up with a killer 9/11 meme?
It's also just like not top of mind. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And again, like, I just really think that people don't, especially younger people, don't even realize what they're saying. It's kind of like when you're playing Cards Against Humanity and there's some crazy sick cards in those decks.
Yeah.
But like, you would never say that to somebody. You know what I mean? I just think that internet humor is like, for better or worse, is meant to be edgy.
Yeah.
And sometimes people take it too far for certain groups of people.
Well, yeah. And I think that goes back to being able to read a room. Because to your point, Pam, with Cards Against Humanity, you still have to read the room when you play that game and kind of know where the lines are with everyone who's in the room and color inside the fucking lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Pam,
true.
you were talking about, as a journalist, having to compartmentalize, and setting journalists aside. I would encourage Gen Zers or other people who have become desensitized to go on YouTube and search Today Show or Good Morning America 9/11 and watch the minute by minute coverage of what was going on, or Regis and Kelly when they were on air. I every once in a while watch those again because from a media standpoint, it's very interesting to see how the coverage unfolded. And every time, I've watched these videos a lot over the last 23 years, and every time it makes me really depressed to see that slow realization come across the faces of the anchors that something very serious is happening, and just seeing what the city and the world was going through.
Yeah. And
the split-second decisions.
I think also looking at how major figures in pop culture were reacting at the time, because you got to see a lot of people get really vulnerable in a way that they don't typically. The video I would recommend checking out is actually Jon Stewart's statement on 9/11 after it happened. And I mean, I'm an ultimate Jon Stewart fangirl, so of course I recommend that. But it was incredibly moving, and he's a New Yorker, so it was deeply personal for him.
And to that point, what does actually get me, like, I know I said that, like, there's very little about that will move me to tears. It's, but one of the things that always does is seeing how hard, Jon Stewart specifically has fought for, healthcare rights. For a lot of the workers that have suffered as a result of being first responders on the scene. And the fact that this country's healthcare system is so broken that a lot of those people who we kind of like trudge out every year and tout as heroes aren't getting the help they need is just absolutely disgusting. So you're talking about, there's still stuff like small stuff like that will still kind of really get to me. But and sometimes I think that, like, that's the key to empathy, is just finding the thing that resonates with you. So whether that's like the rescue dogs that went in, or the like the first responders who are still alive who still need a lot of help. Like, sometimes that's the key to contextualizing history.
There was Pam, you bringing up the rescue dogs reminded me of this article that I saw, and I think it was on the 10-year anniversary. So on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, one of the rescue dogs who worked at the World Trade Center was given a birthday present because it was like her 12th birthday or something. And they booked her a room at this like luxury boutique doggy hotel in New York, and had gourmet meals made for her, and took her on like a whole car ride around Manhattan and took her shopping. It was like the most wholesome thing.
It's so sweet.
Yeah, I know. So if you didn't feel like you could connect to it before you heard that, Gen Z, there you go.
Right. The best boys and girls.
I think there are plenty of Gen Zers who absolutely connect with it. Because I'm like, there are Gen Zers whose families were affected by it, right? So like, certainly not to paint with a broad brush, but it definitely seems like some people have gotten too comfortable.
Yeah. All right, we will move towards the end of the show in a second, but first we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Pam, what is coming up in After Dark this week on Patreon and Apple Podcasts?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. So on After Dark, we're going to be talking about morning routines. And this is inspired by a Vox editorial that I read a few months ago now. But basically, apparently the internet's kind of obsessed with morning routines. And I can kind of see that based on like how many Get Ready With Me videos there are running rampant on places like TikTok. But this is something that we actually don't know about each other. So we thought it would be fun to talk about like how we start our days, and also kind of talk about how we keep good habits overall. So hopefully that helps you all listening if you're looking to kind of start a new routine and are struggling with keeping good habits going. We might be able to help you out with some advice there as well.
We're being helpful today between this topic and the friendship stuff, which was a fun conversation.
We try every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. I can't wait for this discussion because I need help. So I'm here for all of y'all's recommendations. After Dark is part of Mega Millennial, which you can get every week when you're a patron or Apple Podcast subscriber. It's also ad-free because we prefer your support over working with advertisers. Visit patreon.com/millennial to pledge today, or Apple Podcast users can tap into the show and subscribe to the Mega Millennial feed.
Other Patreon benefits include recording studio access. Thanks to everybody who has joined us tonight. It's been a lively conversation on the Discord. We also offer monthly variety shows. We got a new one of those coming this week. You also get access to our planning meetings, our planning docs, and drum roll please, starting in October, we are launching a new benefit called From the Vault, Smart Mouths. That's
Dun,
right, y'all.
dun, dun.
We are going to be releasing 2 episodes of our previous podcast, Smart Mouths, every month on the Millennial Patreon. And for the first time ever, because we didn't have a Patreon for that back in the day, we're also going to be sharing the planning docs for these episodes. And these planning docs, they're as quirky as the episodes were. So,
Yep.
so we thought that'd be a fun added perk, even if you've listened to these Smart Mouths episodes before. Patreon.com/millennial is where you'll be able to get access to those starting in October. Time for some recommendations. What do you got for us, Laura?
I want to recommend Frank Turner. He is a singer-songwriter out of the UK. I've been following him for over 10 years at this point, but recommending him because me and my mom actually just went and saw a concert of his in Nashville over the weekend. And I hadn't gotten to see him since before COVID. And seeing him again just reminded me how good he was. And I've just been rocking out to Frank Turner ever since then. So if you haven't had a chance to check out his discography, definitely should. But certainly a good place to start is his newest album, Undefeated.
And if you're heading out to a concert or any sort of special event, like a musical theater performance, anything like that, I would highly recommend checking out Spot Hero to compare parking prices between what they have available on there versus what you would pay in a traditional garage you could just drive into. I always do this whenever I'm going out on the town for whatever reason. And usually the Spot Hero prices for parking are a lot cheaper. Sometimes you're parking in strange places, like it'll be like an apartment complex garage that has extra parking spots. Or I've definitely parked in like somebody's driveway before that has put their driveway up for parking as well. But like I said, it's usually a lot cheaper. I think I'll be going to a concert on Thursday, and I am only paying $5 for parking.
Gotta
And
love
it's
that.
less than a mile away.
That's great.
Yeah, to walk over to the venue. So definitely check out Spot Hero next time you're looking for a parking spot.
I also want to recommend an app. It's called Zero. It's only for iOS for now, but it is coming to Android. There has been a lot of talk amongst nerds that the camera apps built into iPhone and Android are doing too much work to try and create the perfect photo because Apple, Google, Samsung, for example, they're doing all this computational photography. They're using AI. They're using algorithms to try and create better photos. But really, it just ends up making the photos look worse. It looks less like an authentic photo like we used to get with film cameras. They're just doing too much. Now there's an app, Zero, that lets you take pics with your phone camera without these algorithms trying to mess with the photo. I have been using Zero for about a month now. It's a very simple app. You just point and shoot. The photos are so much warmer in many cases. I've been doing side-by-side comparisons. I love the photos I'm taking. I've taken photos at sunset, and now my nephews are not washed out at the beach because iPhone is trying to brighten the photo at the end of the day. It just looks like a better, more authentic, like I said, photo. Now, the thing is, Zero has a subscription, or you can buy a lifetime subscription. It's $20, I think. This is worth it to me because I just feel like I'm taking better photos.
Well, listen up, pals. It's time to give you a few reminders. Make sure you're following the show in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode, and leave us a review in Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Also, don't forget we're now releasing video episodes on YouTube.
To stay in touch with us, email millennialshow@gmail.com or visit millennialshow.com. While you're there, you'll also find links to all of our various social media channels, so please do give us a follow on those or subscribe if you're hanging out with us over on YouTube. Spotify users can also leave feedback directly within an episode.
After Dark starts in a moment for patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.